industry. Does anyone have a way to clear out this inventory? I'll take scrap prices if I have to. A clothing factory owner is clearing out inventory due to excess stock.
Does anyone want these white pants? If you don't mind, you can just take them. It's such a shame to throw away tens of thousands of them. The US is hitting us with heavy tariffs, and these goods are affected. Physical stores are closing down. All the big brands are shipping their genuine products with labels. There's only 3 days left, so I'm clearing everything out at a discount. If you've never bought before, now's the time to try a few.
The US-China trade war has dealt a devastating blow to industries that depend on exports to the United States, especially in sectors such as textiles, apparel, electronics, and automotive products. Factories that previously manufactured goods for American brands have been hit hardest, with widespread order cancellations and even finished products left without buyers. Many factories have been forced to halt production or attempt to reduce inventory through domestic sales, but weak consumer demand at home has limited the impact, resulting in heavy losses. Today is April 10th. U.S. tariffs have surged to a staggering 145%. Many friends running OEM factories for American brands told me all their U.S. orders were canceled. Even completed goods are being rejected, and shipments that already reached the port are being pulled back. Some shameless clients are even demanding their deposits back. When disaster hits, it's always the factories left holding the bag.
Yeah, so you're not going to get that narrative in the mainstream level media because, again, the media is pro-China, right? If the media came out and told people that, hey, if we hold on just maybe a week or two longer with maximum pressure on China, we'll probably break them, right? We'll probably actually get them to the table because, again, their economy cannot survive, okay? People will be unemployed. There will be mass unemployment. China is in a real estate bubble. There are a lot of demographic issues going on in China. They have an aging population. They need the United States of America. They need our market. And when we close up our market like that, that is a big blow to China. But again, you don't hear that narrative in the media because they don't want you to think that, right? That means that President Trump is winning and that his tariffs are working. And you can't have that, right? Wall Street can't have that. Wall Street can't take a loss. They can't take a hit for a week or two, right? They just can't hold out like real patriots, right? Like pro-American businesses who, again, want to see America win instead of just their pocketbooks, right? No, they can't do that. Okay, they have to dump U.S. treasuries to pretend as if President Trump is collapsing the dollar, right? So I want you guys to understand, Wall Street is creating a crisis, a financial crisis. I would go as far as to call it economic treason, right? They're engaged in financial warfare against the United States of America because when they sell treasury bonds, like they're doing, right? Like clearly, obviously they're doing in protest of Trump, right? In order to try to keep Trump in line, that drives up interest rates. And when interest rates are driven up, mortgage rates, things of that nature go up, that increase borrowing costs, right? It puts strain on the U.S. economy when you have Wall Street bond dumping, right? When people start bond dumping, okay, which again, I believe that's what Wall Street is doing, that hurts the U.S. economy and helps China, okay? It doesn't mean that people are losing faith in the dollar. That's not what it means. It just means that Wall Street is throwing a fit. And if China, if they're selling treasuries already, then that means they're probably panicking. So I just want people to be clear, okay? My thesis is that you have a country that is probably bond dumping, likely China, and then, you also have domestic forces in the United States of America, like Wall Street, and who knows, maybe some other financial institutions in Europe or other parts of the world too. Maybe they're also part of this. I'm just saying that, again, a lot of what we're seeing in regards to the bond market, it's not broken, it's just being manipulated. It's being manipulated to look like it's broken because if China, if they're already dumping U.S. bonds, again, that means that they're panicking, right? That's exactly what that means. Because in the long run, that doesn't help China.
Yeah, so what you're saying is correct. Now I can see the big picture where they were fighting against Trump because of the tariff pressure on China, like he's saying. So this is true. Yeah, I can see that happening from the other side. Yeah, so let's hear what he has to say.
Due to the fact that it would strengthen the yuan, which would make their exports more expensive, which is definitely something that China doesn't want in the long term. So if they're doing that to appear stronger than they are, that means that they want to get this over with quickly, right? They want Trump to fold quickly, which is why they're coming out here and basically demanding that President Trump get rid of all the tariffs, even though President Trump is basically still working out the details in regards to how he wants to apply the tariffs across the board, okay, which is being misinterpreted by the media as President Trump folding, because, again, that's what they want. Wall Street wants President Trump to fold as well, too, because, again, they want to do business in China. They don't want to see China have an economic collapse, right? This is what they're panicking about, right? Because if we hold these tariffs in place for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, we may be able to get China to break. So with all that being said, I just want people to understand what President Trump is up against right now, right? He's literally up against everybody, okay, who is on the side of China, right? The whole political establishment, the financial establishment, they are on the side of China, and they're against Trump. And Trump has to hold strong against all of those entities, right? So without further ado, I want to react to this interview featuring a U.S. trade representative for President Trump, Jamieson Greer, and Margaret Brennan, who is the Trump deranged host for Face the Nation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
States Trade Representative Ambassador Jamieson Greer. Good morning to you, Mr. Ambassador.
If you're in Canada and have over $10,000 of debt, payday loans, credit cards, and lines of credit that you can't pay off or get to zero. Good morning, Margaret. How are you?
I'm well. I'm hoping you can give us some news of movement on this clash. Is the Trump administration opening any kind of channel to Beijing right now? Are there any plans for Presidents Trump and Xi to speak?
Right now, we don't have any plans on that. This issue is truly at the leaders' level. Before April 2nd, I had a conversation with my counterpart, and others did. Since April 2nd, we have this at the leaders' level, and at some point, as President Trump has pointed out, we expect that we'll be able to have a conversation with them.
Well, China holds about $1.5 trillion in assets in this country. About half of them are U.S. treasuries. In the past, you've spoken about strategic decoupling from China and acknowledged it would cause some short-term pain. Are you trying to get China to sell some of those assets? Is that part of your goal as well?
That's not part of this plan. President Trump has a global program to try to reshore American manufacturing and address the trade deficit. It's a global issue. The only reason we're really in this position right now is because China chose to retaliate. So many other countries affirmatively said they did not want to retaliate. We want to negotiate with the Americans, and the Chinese made a different decision. So it's not a plan to do that. It was a Chinese decision. They have agency here.
But are you prepared for China to consider selling assets it holds in the United States? And do you want that to happen?
Well, remember, China's been selling off treasuries for some time. It's not a brand new development. The treasuries market will fluctuate. I'm not the Treasury Secretary, so I'm not the best poised to talk about that. But I think the issue is we've become so dependent on China, and for so many decades we haven't had fair market access. So again, we see China taking action, implementing their policy to try to be less tied up with us as well. So it's not surprising to see them making these kinds of moves. We obviously have to be prepared on our part to have a resilient economy.
So last Friday, late in the day, the administration published some exceptions to the tariffs on countries, including China, with smartphones, computers, electronics, and machines that make semiconductor computer chips. Last Sunday on this program, the Commerce Secretary told us the tariffs are part of a strategy to bring high-tech factories to the U.S. Take a listen.
The army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones, that kind of thing is going to come to America. It's going to be automated, and great Americans, the trade craft of America, is going to fix them, is going to work on them. Our high school educated Americans, the core to our workforce, is going to have the greatest resurgence of jobs in the history of America to work on these high-tech factories.
But now those high-tech items are given these exceptions. So is the goal still to move electronics manufacturing to the United States?
We certainly need to have semiconductors and the downstream electronics supply chain move to the United States. What happened is, it's not really an exception, that's not even the right word for it. What happened is this type of supply chain moved from the tariff regime for the global tariff, the reciprocal tariff, and it moved to the national security tariff regime, where we have studies ongoing for pharmaceuticals, for semiconductors, metals, etc. So it's not that they won't be subject to tariffs geared at reshoring, they'll just be under a different regime. It's shifting from one bucket of tariffs to a different bucket of potential tariffs.
Yeah, so just so people understand exactly what's going on, because again, the media is trying to frame President Trump and this move as him, quote unquote, folding. But I think it's more about Trump trying to, at the very least, again, keep Wall Street from continuing to commit financial treason against this country, because that's what they're doing. Apparently, Tim Cook had called up Trump's team, right, about the 100+% tariffs, okay, across the board, the reciprocal tariffs, and they didn't like that, right? Clearly, Apple does not like those tariffs on their smartphones and things like that. So I think what happened is that Trump is trying to walk the fine line of not letting up on China while at the same time not having Wall Street panic, right? Like, because again, that's what they're doing. This is again why they're panic selling their treasuries, okay? Because they're trying to influence the president and to get him to stop crippling China, right? This is what they're trying to do. Again, they're working on behalf of the Chinese. So when it comes to certain goods like, the semiconductors, the electronics, the goods that we should build here, okay, for national security purposes, he moved them into another bucket of goods, right, where their tariffs are going to be like 20%, okay? But again, the tariffs are still going to be there, right? They're not going away. They're still there. They just moved them in another bucket. And I think part of the reason why is because, again, Wall Street is freaking out, okay, about these tariffs, and they're in the administration's ear about it. But President Trump knows that he can't let up, right? We have to continue to squeeze China because we can get them to come to the table. We just have to stick it out just a little bit longer, right? Just a little bit longer. But again, Wall Street, they seem hell-bent on trying to make the president fold. But the president is not folding, at least not at this point.
But those tariffs aren't in place.
That's right.
So they are exempt
that is subject to study by the Commerce Department. For now, they're subject to a 20% tariff. They're subject to a 20% tariff. That's on China.
The Commerce Secretary was on another network this morning, and he said semiconductors are, quote, exempt from reciprocal tariffs, but that won't be a permanent sort of exemption. Here's what you told my colleague Nicole Killian April 8th.
Why aren't there any exemptions with some of these tariffs, sir?
The president decided that we're not going to have exemptions. We can't have a Swiss cheese solution to this universal problem that we're facing.
So I hear you saying the carve-outs are temporary, but isn't that still the Swiss cheese situation you said you were trying to avoid?
I would just disagree with that, Margaret. We have two different tariff programs. You have the global reciprocal tariff getting at the trade deficit, and you have critical sector national security tariffs, where we have tariffs in place on autos, steel, and aluminum, and we have them coming on semiconductors in the supply chain, pharmaceuticals, lumber, copper, etc. They're just different approaches to do it. We have to be much more deliberate about the semiconductor supply chain because we don't even import semiconductors as such that much, right? They go into downstream products. So we have to be very careful. We want the whole supply chain here, not just one product.
So the president said on Monday he'd be much more specific. Will we see those sectoral tariffs announced? I mean, he's saying he's already putting big tariffs on pharma. You're telling me that there's going to be an investigation into it. That's something that sounds like it's far in the future. What time frame are we talking about?
Well, for the national security tariffs, you have to do an investigation in order to impose the tariffs. That's just legal process. That's how we do it. That's how it was done for steel and aluminum, autos, etc.
Right, but you've decided the outcome.
Investigations for those. No, we have not. We have not. That's why they're exempt. That's why they're, they don't have a tariff covered right now, because you have to go through the investigation to determine the outcome.
Okay.
We expect there will have to be some kind of tariff on that, but we have to go through the investigation, figure out what's appropriate, and that's a Commerce Department function to do that.
Yeah, so I just want you guys to understand what's happening here, okay? Again, President Trump, he's not just working against China, right? Again, it's against Wall Street, it's against the liberal media, it's against the Democrats. And when you're in that position, right, it's going to be tough, right? It's going to be tough to be hard on China because the honest to God truth is that as a country, we don't have the sense of American pride and nationalism to take a little bit of pain, right? A little bit of short-term pain for long-term gain, right? We have such a short-term mindset, and that is especially true with Wall Street, right? They're just worried about the next quarter. That's all they're worried about. They're not worried about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Again, this is why these people buy and sell and they trade every day, because they're not investors. They're speculators, right? The speculators are upset that there's uncertainty when it comes to China, okay, and that's why they want to end this as fast as possible. And they would much rather see President Trump fold than for China to fold, because if President Trump folds, then we go back to the status quo. And they love the status quo, right? Wall Street loves the status quo that we currently have with China, and they're not interested in making trade more fair or bringing back jobs or any of the goals that President Trump has laid out, because for them, they like the arrangement right now, okay? They like doing business in China and having certain opportunities that the CCP allows, right, them to have. They like that. They like their special privileges. So, that is essentially what we're dealing with. And that's why I want people to understand about this whole trade thing is that, yes, things are going to continue to change. And the reason why they're changing and they're evolving is because President Trump has maximum pressure on himself due to the fact that it's quite literally him against the whole establishment, right? And now you can see why is it that you had a bunch of politicians give lip service to take it on China, but never actually did it, right? Because taking on China means that literally everybody, the whole establishment, turns against you, and that's what you're seeing happening with President Trump. So we're going to see how long this continues to go. If President Trump can continue to hold strong, I think that he can make China fold. I think he can make China come to the table. The liberal media is purposely not talking about the job losses, the economic destruction, what is happening to China as a result of the fact that you have U.S. consumers canceling orders from China, producers canceling orders. Like, China is more dependent on us than we are for them, and that's just the reality of the situation. We have the upper hand here. The problem is, again, is that the president is being undermined by domestic forces, right? So, again, that is the issue that we have to overcome. It's just going to be interesting to see how the president continues to deal with the pressure, mainly from Wall Street and the liberal media, to fold to China. So, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.